Okay, are you ready to dive into this? It's luxury beliefs.
Luxury beliefs.
Luxury beliefs. It's juicier than it sounds. We're going to be unpacking some really fascinating ideas today.
Okay, sounds good.
So we're talking about those ideas and opinions that become like status symbols.
Yeah.
Those things that people believe to project this air of being elite.
Oh, I see. So are your ideas more Birkin bag or more bargain bin, so to speak?
Exactly. We're diving into a lecture today from someone who's seen this firsthand, going from foster homes to Yale.
Talk about a crash course in status. That's quite a journey.
He's seen it all, which makes me even more curious about this idea that he leads with. It's this whole the more you have, the more you want thing.
The more you have, the more you want. Isn't that interesting? You'd think at some point, enough is enough, right?
You'd think.
But research shows the opposite. The wealthier someone is, the more they crave even more wealth and status. It's like they're running on a hedonic treadmill.
A hedonic treadmill, huh?
They need more to stay in place.
Okay, that makes sense in a weird way. The lecture even talked about how the desire for respect gets amplified for people who are already successful.
It's all relative, right?
It is.
If you're constantly surrounded by high achievers, suddenly your own accomplishments might feel less impressive.
Totally. If everyone around you is driving a Mercedes, suddenly your Toyota feels a little less than.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same with ideas. If an idea becomes too common, it loses that exclusive appeal for those who really want to stand out. That's where luxury beliefs come in.
It's like those limited edition sneakers. Half the appeal is that not everyone can have them.
Precisely. Scarcity, exclusivity, it's all part of the game.
Speaking of games, the lecture went on this trip through the history of status symbols, from those powdered wigs
Oh, yeah.
to defund the police.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. How did we get from powdered wigs to defund the police?
How did we get there?
It's about the underlying pattern of status. What signals status, it keeps changing. We've gone from showing off material wealth, like those fancy wigs, to now showcasing our beliefs and our values, even if those beliefs have real-world consequences.
Explain this defund the police thing as a status symbol, because I can see how a fancy car is a status symbol, but an idea,
Right.
especially one that's so controversial.
The lecturer argues that for some affluent urbanites, supporting defund the police became a way to signal their progressive values, their commitment to social justice, even if they didn't necessarily grasp all of the complexities of the issue itself.
And the lecture wasn't shy about pointing out the potential downsides of this, like how defunding the police might actually make things less safe for the very people it claims to help.
Exactly. It's like a luxury car that looks great in the showroom, but can't handle a pothole. It raises questions about the disconnect between signaling and actual impact.
You know what's always blown my mind? It's how attached we all are to our own beliefs, even when we're challenged on them. Like, why do you think that is?
I think it's because beliefs are more than just facts, right? They're deeply intertwined with our identity. They're how we see ourselves, how we see the world.
It's true.
Changing our minds, it can feel like we're betraying ourselves, betraying our tribe, our people.
The lecture actually compared beliefs to possessions, which I thought was interesting. We cling to them, we defend them, and we rarely trade them in without a fight.
It's that old saying, you break it, you buy it.
But in this case, you challenge it, you better be ready to wrestle me for it.
Exactly. And there's a psychological principle called the Endowment Effect that plays into this. Basically, we value things more just because we own them, right? And this applies to ideas just as much as material possessions. Think about a time that you've had a belief challenged. Did you immediately become more open to the other side, or did you find yourself digging your heels in a little?
Plead the fifth.
Right.
It's true. Our brains are almost wired to protect our beliefs, even if they're wrong. But here's something I've always wondered. Are smarter people more susceptible to luxury beliefs? You'd think they'd see through them.
The lecture dives into this thing called the social brain hypothesis. It basically suggests that our intelligence evolved to navigate complex social worlds, not necessarily to uncover objective truths.
So it's less about being right and more about fitting in.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Think about it. For our ancestors, survival depended on these social alliances, right?
Right.
Being able to read social cues, align yourself with the right group, that was crucial, even if it meant accepting certain beliefs without too much scrutiny.
Okay, that makes sense from a historical perspective. But fast forward to today, does that mean that we're hardwired to prioritize social harmony, like fitting in over objective truth?
The lecturer argues that this tendency might make us more likely to adopt beliefs that boost our social standing, even if those beliefs are a little shaky. Think about it. If everyone in your social circle believes something and you go against the grain, You could lose those connections.
So those luxury beliefs, they become like social currency, right?
That's a social signal.
It's less about what you actually believe and more about showing that you're a member of a certain group. It's like buying a VIP pass to a club, but instead of paying with money, you're paying with public agreement to these ideas.
What's fascinating is the more intelligent someone is, the better they might be at justifying those beliefs. Even if they have doubts, they can create these elaborate arguments to bridge that gap between what they believe and what benefits them socially.
So we're using our big brains to rationalize instead of the other way around.
It's like that, yeah.
We're smart enough to fool ourselves.
The lecturer cited studies suggesting that educated people are more prone to self-censor. They've worked hard to build their careers, their reputations. They don't want to risk it all by voicing unpopular opinions.
It's like that old saying, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down.
And it makes you wonder, are there any truly independent thinkers out there? Or are we all just products of our social circles?
Honestly.
It is a question for the ages. The lecturer points out that this competition for status, for influence within the elite, he calls it intra-elite conflict. And this has a ripple effect on everyone.
Okay, break that down for me. Intra-elite conflict. What is it and why should I even care?
Think of it as a constant battle for a limited number of spots at the top. Within the elite, there's always this struggle for power, for influence, and it creates some really intense competition.
So it's like a game of musical chairs, but instead of losing your seat, you lose your influence and status. These luxury beliefs, they become weapons in that battle.
That's a great way to put it. The lecturer argues that this competition incentivizes these increasingly extreme or dogmatic views. People try to outmaneuver each other by showcasing their loyalty to a cause, even if their actual beliefs are more nuanced.
It's like those reality shows where contestants will throw anyone under the bus just to get ahead, but instead of winning a prize, they're trying to shape the beliefs and values of society.
It's a different kind of game, but the stakes can be just as high.
It's all a bit Machiavellian, isn't it?
He argues that this is particularly relevant in fields like academia, media, politics, where influence and reputation are everything.
Tell me about it.
Remember those examples he gave in the lecture?
Yeah.
About those Yale students, right? Publicly criticizing investment banks as these evil corporations, but then flocking to their recruitment events.
The irony, it's one thing to talk the talk, but when it comes to walking the walk, self-interest often trumps ideology.
Yeah, and it makes you question how much of what we see, especially from influential figures, is driven by genuine belief versus strategic self-interest.
It's like that saying, do as I say, not as I do. But here's the thing, right? If everyone is just performing to try and...
And it leads us to a crucial question. How does this constant churn of luxury beliefs affect the rest of us, the people who aren't vying for a spot in the elite? Because it's not like these ideas stay confined to ivory towers and gated communities.
How does that work? How do these luxury beliefs trickle down and actually affect the rest of us?
The lecturer argues that this whole intra-elite competition with its constantly evolving luxury beliefs can actually be a powerful engine for social change,
Okay.
both positive and negative.
I can see how that constant jostling for position could shake things up. But how does that actually translate into, like, real-world change?
Because in their quest to challenge the status quo, these aspiring elites often introduce new ideas, new language, new ways of seeing the world. They're trying to capture attention, gain influence.
Right.
And sometimes that means pushing the envelope further and further.
So it's like they're constantly trying to one-up each other with even more extreme or outlandish views just to gain more followers and win the debate.
It becomes less about the actual idea and more about who can make the most noise. And because these ideas are often wrapped up in this intellectual-sounding language, framed as morally righteous, they can be very convincing, especially to people who already agree or aspire to be part of that elite circle.
It's like they're creating a whole new rule book for what it means to be in the know or on the right side of history. And if you don't keep up, you're out of touch, or even worse, you're part of the problem.
It creates this pressure to conform, even if you have doubts. And that's where it can become potentially dangerous. Because that pressure, it can stifle debate, critical thinking, and ultimately progress. When we're too afraid to question the narrative, challenge those ideas, we all lose.
So on the one hand, this competition can drive social change. But on the other hand, it can also create this climate of fear and silence dissent.
That's a paradox.
Paradox.
And the lecturer adds another layer to this. He suggests that this constant churn of new ideas, luxury beliefs, can actually serve to maintain the existing power structure.
How does that work?
Think about it this way. If we're constantly distracted and divided by the latest social justice cause or work terminology, are we really focusing on the underlying systemic issues that perpetuate inequality? It's like a magician using misdirection. We're so busy looking at the shiny objects, we don't see the real game that's being played.
It's like we're all stuck on this hamster wheel of outrage, just arguing about the symptoms while the root causes stay the same.
It highlights the importance of taking a step back, critically evaluating the information that's coming at us, and asking ourselves who benefits from these narratives.
It's about thinking for ourselves, right? Instead of letting others dictate what we should or shouldn't believe.
It's not always easy, especially in today's world.
No, it's not, with information overload coming from every direction.
Exactly. And that's why the lecture ended with this question. He said, if you could invent a new luxury belief, one that would make you instantly popular with your desired group, what would it be? And what does that tell you?
Wow. That's a question to really sit with. It makes you think about why we believe the things we do.
It's a humbling exercise, isn't it?
It is.
It highlights the importance of self-awareness, critical thinking, maybe even a little healthy skepticism, especially when it comes to those ideas that seem designed to divide us more than unite us.
This whole deep dive has been quite a ride. It's eye-opening to think about how these luxury beliefs operate and how they can influence us both consciously and unconsciously.
It makes you think twice about what you believe and why, right?
It does.
And maybe even more importantly, it encourages us to be more discerning about the ideas that we embrace and promote, especially those that come with that allure of social status.
Because ultimately, it's not about being right or wrong, woke or not woke. It's about engaging in thoughtful dialogue, even with those who hold different views, and being open to changing our own minds when we encounter new information.
Well said. Maybe by being more aware of these dynamics, we can create a world where ideas are judged on their merit and not just on their ability to grant us some kind of social currency.
That's a world I can get behind. To our listeners, as you're navigating this complex world, remember to stay curious, keep questioning, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo, even if it means risking a little social discomfort. Because the truth, it's often found outside of our comfort zones.